Have you ever heard of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC?
Hi, I'm Benny Safdie. I'm the writer and director of The Smashing Machine. I could see that there's a part of Dwayne that is like that. It's uncomfortable to watch, but that's real. I'm at the IndieWire studio here in New York City to talk about my movie on the Filmmaker Toolkit podcast.
Definitely want to get into you coming aboard and what you saw in this, and I don't mean for you to speak for Dwayne, but this is something he optioned. Like a lot of us, he saw that doc in the early 2000s, right? And so this started with him many years ago. Not where he is now, not about your collaboration, but what was that thing for him that drew him to this property?
Well, that's the thing is like when he approached me about it, it was like I remember watching it and thinking, this is a strange decision for him, It wasn't like what I would imagine the story or the person that he would want to embody. And just that alone just kind of kept scratching at me because these kind of things are very rare in the sense that it's not often that somebody approaches you with something that actually lines up with what you want to do. In this case, there was something about Mark that I found really beautiful. And seeing him in this world, I could understand what he saw in Mark. And I think we saw the same thing. All right, I want you to essentially inhabit the soul of another human being. That was the goal for the movie. He's like, done. I want to do that too. And that's insane. Do you know that he was willing to do that and go there? But it was really, I just could sense behind his eyes that there was something that he wanted to explore and that he felt he could learn from Mark and from trying to feel his feelings. That was something we talked about really early on,
I'm going to take a guess here, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but there's almost an openness, a kindness.
Oh yeah.
There's something almost vulnerable. Is there something
exactly?
And it sounds, when you say that, it sounds almost a little childlike.
No, but
there
right.
is something that's definitely unique, I think, for an adult, but also for this killer of a wrestler.
Yes, exactly. This guy who can literally destroy you in 5 seconds, is this really kind, gentle, hyper-intellectual human being. That's an insane kind of combination. And I thought that that's a very unique person. And I could see that there's a part of Dwayne that is like that. He has this personality outside, but then here I am talking to him, and he's talking to me about his family, how he grew up, the places he's been, the things he's been through. And I'm like, nobody knows this about him,
Because he's got this easygoing charisma.
Exactly. He has that charisma that people want to be drawn to, but they don't want to know anything. They're like, we see you as this invincible, incredibly magnetic person. And they don't know that there's another side. And maybe they're they don't know that by seeing the other side, it actually deepens and makes the charisma and other part even more beautiful. That's what I saw was oh my God, the fact that you can have that personality and also harbor all of these incredible, intense, complicated emotions makes it that much more unbelievable because the other side is true. He is both sides. And I think that that's what he saw in Mark. And then I saw that in Mark too, because I myself, it's nobody knows what I've been through in life, and you have to go out and you do things like this and you present it. And it's just that idea of kind of performing, putting your certain things that you feel maybe to the wayside to benefit other people. I've done that before. And that part of it, I think and also this idea that somebody so strong could be so vulnerable. I loved that, I was reading a book about Bruce Springsteen, by Stephen Hayden. And it was this idea that here was Bruce bringing emotions out of people who never would have felt these things before. Think of how many lives he saved, I think he says in the book. And I'm like, that's really amazing. And I thought, oh, wow, well, what if you could do that with a movie, where you can take something that on the surface is this fighting world and this intensity, but then you can create this kind of communal experience with an audience where you all go through his life or his feelings. that could be an amazing thing, you know?
I definitely want to hit both sides of this. There is a fascination, and I think anybody that even just seen the publicity stills for this movie, there's a physical transformation of this. But even before we get into that, there's an element here that I wonder. I mean, I know authenticity is important to you.
Yeah.
I know Mark is important in getting that. But was there also an element of whatever, and I want to hear what he went through, that physical aspect was part of this, of becoming like psychologically of him getting a character?
Yeah, I think that like what I maybe didn't realize before we started going, but I knew for me there was something that like part of the transformation was you got to look like the guy, you know, that's just part of it, you know, and or at least a little bit. And one of the things was I said, like, you have to get bigger, which I don't know if he's ever been asked before. And he's like, let me think about that. And then he understood what I was talking about, because there's different muscles that Mark had because of what he does, you know? And so Dwayne got on board. He's like, all right, give me this amount of time. And he completely changed his diet and everything. And I think that discipline and everything really helped him get into the mindset. You know, I have to wake up in the middle of the night and eat this amount of chicken, you know, at like 3 a.m. because you're not getting enough protein. And then on top of that, specifically when we were working with Kazu, just trying to figure out the level of transformation on the face, you know, and there's a lot of little pieces that go on him just to change his face a little bit. It's mainly focusing on the brow, the nose, and the ear.
What about the neck?
There's nothing on the neck.
So that's all just from him beefing up?
Yes, that's all him, which is insane. That's all like...
And the body is him too?
The body is him. Everything is him.
I'm sure there's things you can do with makeup to make it a little shinier.
Well, no, the body, that was like, because we covered his tattoos, but that physical he got enormous. I think he said he put on 30 pounds of muscle, which is insane, you know? But like, so literally it was just focusing here, the nose and the ear. And
because like right here, that's the essence of his stardom. So it's like there's you can kind of.
But his smile is so important.
Yeah.
And the way he uses his mouth, and I thought, and I wanted that to come through, you know. And I said that to Dwayne. I said, I know you're expressing yourself in this, so I don't want to make you disappear. I want you to come through as well. I want this to be like a true molding of the two people, you know.
I'm sure somewhere along the way, one of us is going to talk to Kazu and we'll get into all of this. But one thing that I find remarkable with this is, and he's done transformations before, because, and we'll obviously get into this, the way that you wanted to approach the fighting, this shit's got to stay on.
Oh, yes.
Through long takes of wrestling.
Yes. Like that's what I was like. And I finally just got the answer from him, because I remember he was talking to one of the producers, David Copeland. He's like, oh, it's going to be a thing. It's going to come off. We need to have extra time, all this stuff. And I said, it didn't. It didn't come off. And so why did you say that? He's like, well, I said that because he was like, I'm covering myself. He's like, I didn't want to say I'm working on this new glue and all this stuff so that it stays on, because then they're going to say, hey, you told us it would stay on. He goes, I was basically experimenting and then seeing if it would work. And it did, because there's moments where like they're putting their hands on it. His face is getting moved around. And that's the kind of thing that I find actually is very important, is that when you do this kind of stuff, you can't shy away from that, because then people will know like, oh, they're not touching this part of him because of that. But if you see hitting, sweat, hands, and people are touching his hair, he's touching his hair, all that stuff is important, because then you forget that that's there. So it's an interesting balance, because everybody knows we did it. And you really have to work hard in the movie to get you to forget that we did it, you know? And that was something Dwayne said, is he said, I don't want to think about that I'm wearing this. And I said, that's key. So that was also the amount of stuff that we had to figure out, was to the point where he felt comfortable and not like he was wearing anything. You know, that's the key.
So you're a big MMA fan, right? This is you.
Yes. So the thing is, I'm a very big boxing fan, and early on I would watch these. Like in 2002, I went to a UFC fight with my stepfather, and it was like insane. I would watch the tapes, and so yes, so I'm a combat sports fan.
Because, and I think your film captures this really well. And I kind of remember this too. It was like outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was like,
it was illegal. Literally, you could not. The tapes that you would find in the video store were banned in the United States. There were laws that were saying it was like human cockfighting. It was illegal. And I think it wasn't until even recently that you could have a UFC event in New York City. So it's like that idea is so crazy to me. And then like as I got more into it specifically for this movie, as I was learning about it, I'm learning that like, okay, specifically in like MMA, there's a big difference with boxing, In boxing, it's like an invisible injury. It's the brain is getting destroyed over time. And in MMA, there's like scars and this, and there's the ear and all that stuff. It could be uncomfortable to watch, but the thing is when you talk to them, they can remember everything. They're able to recount specific seconds of a match. I'm talking to Boz, and he's like, there was one fight where he was exhausted, and I said, what was happening there? And he walked me through every single step of the fight. And yes, it looks like it's like really intense, but there is something there. There's an improvisation that's going on with these people in there. And also, most of the time, they're friends with each other. There's a huge respect amongst them. And that I thought was really cool. Is that why you did so much locker room stuff? Yes, is that I wanted to show that side of it because I was going to do something with boxing. And I was like, you know what? I got to learn how to box. That's just one of the things you do.
You learn how to box?
Yes. So I learned how to box. And so then I go to a gym. I have to submit myself to that. I'm very embarrassed. I'm going to look like a complete idiot. And I just over time, and it's like 10 years go by, and I did it, And then I would spar, and you'd spar with people. You get punched in the face. You get knocked down. You concussed, all this stuff. And you're so close to the person who did it with you. You're happy they gave you the opportunity to get punched, You thought I was worthy of that. There's something that happens. And you kind of can't really put it into words. But I see it. It's like the friends you make are really deep and intense, and they exist there. And that's something I wanted to show in the movie, when like Dawn is on the outside because she'll never be able to relate to him in the same way that Coleman or Igor, even the guy who beats him up, those people relate to each other in such a different way. And they have a respect for one another because they know the work that goes into it. And that's the key, is that like if somebody's really into it, they respect that. And they're like, okay, fine. You may be terrible, but you're trying, and I like that. And then also the idea of the tap out. Like I didn't understand that until talking to Boz, where he's like, I saw this move on television. He was like walking in Japan. He saw the move, and the guy, he did it. He's like, oh my, that's great. And he did it on somebody else, and he did it wrong, and he actually hurt the guy. And he felt really bad about it because the whole point is you're supposed to get them in the move to give them the opportunity to tap out and say, you win. That's okay. Like I'm going to say I'm done. And I was like, that's such a beautiful idea if you think about it. It's like, I'm not going to rip your head off, but I'm telling you I can rip your head off. It's a fine line,
Choreographing these fights, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the word that you're going to use is real and trying to make it as real as possible. But and obviously you were trying to make a boxing movie at some point, and there is something about that choreography of the fighting.
For sure.
So in both narratively, but then also just working with your stunt coordinator and your wrestlers, what was kind of how did you approach all these big scenes?
So first off, I thought, okay, well, how can I do, because there's so many amazing boxing sports movies like this. And I was like, how can I do something that is a little bit different, just in the sense of like, I want to explore how to make you feel something in the way that they made you feel something. And for me, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to put you there as an audience perspective, basically. So you're going to be from the point of view of where the camera is. And that meant you have to be outside the ring. Because if you were in the ring, we would see the camera person. The camera. It never goes in the ring. It's always on the outside. And that was important because then what that allowed me to do is you can use the ropes, you can use people, you can use everything in your foreground to hide everything. You can go long lens so that the hits look really intense, but they're not actually happening, So it was basically using the idea of the perspective of the camera to hide a lot of these moves. And it's also almost like they're like kind of, how a magician takes the thing and the hoop and moves it over to show no strings. Like there are times where we would start the shot and it looks like an accident, but we would start the shot on this side. I also said we're only doing two sides of the ring. We don't go around it. So you're always kind of situated mentally of where you're looking. Side 1 and side 2 is what we had. And Greg Rementa, the stunt coordinator, he broke up the fights within sections. And those sections are these kind of like bite-sized, manageable amounts of physical activity per section. So you do section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and you go through it chronologically. So as the fight progresses, you can add blood, you can add things, and it's all chronological, so you don't really have to worry about that part of it too. But I would do it from one side, and then I would do it from the other, which was interesting because then we had to do all of the punches and everything to sell it for side 1, and then do it again for the other side so that I had the ability to have those 2 angles at all times to cut to. But that meant that like the punch had to look real from this side and from this side, and that tricks the audience because if I'm seeing it from this side and this side, it kind of gives you the idea that, oh, this is happening one time, you know?
It's taxing on the performers, though.
Oh my God.
Because you're not cutting, right?
So I'm
Well, I mean, you are cutting, but
I'm
I mean,
cutting, but there's a specific element of, okay, if we got it on side 1, we're going to move on to side 2 and do the same section just one more time. So it would maybe be 2 times that they would have to do section 1. And then I would think about it and be like, okay, the punch here didn't land, didn't look good. Let's start from the middle of section 1. So when they fall down, we'll just start on the mat. You don't have to pick the guy up and throw him down. Just start on the mat, lay down, and then you can throw the punches. And then I would change the camera angle where it's just looking up, because if you're looking up at him and he's punching down, you could have the guy holding up gloves, which are padded, and he's just punching the pads. But you add in sound and you hear the face getting punched with like the sound was very important too. Is once you hear that like skin crunch bone, like it's a progression of punch, you hear that happening and they're different every time because they're happening at different angles. So you're hearing different punches. And then when it pans down and you see he's blocking it, that's fine. So you're using what you're not seeing and the audience is filling in the blanks because I didn't want it to be graphic in the same way, but I wanted it to feel like it really happened. You know, somebody said to me, if I'm seeing this on my phone, I better be able to see it in your movie. And I'm like, that's a very good point. So now I had to figure out how to actually achieve that. But what I was saying before is we would start sometimes on the third side and run around to get a better angle of the punch. So we would see the 2 guys like this, and then the camera would run to see what they looked like. And then that would actually set you up in a place where you're seeing the punch hit and it's from the right spot and it looks like he gets hit, but he's not, you know? So there's a lot of things that I'm using these ideas of realism to hide a lot of it. But at some point, you're grappling and you're getting thrown on the ground. And there is contact, you know? So
I read that Dwayne took a punch. Is that true?
that is true. There's one fight in particular where I said, I can't cut away. Like if I cut away, it's gonna hurt the feeling of it. And he's like, I understand. I need to take these. And he was really trying to convince the other guy who's like this, like,
I'm not going to hit Dwayne Johnson.
yeah, he's like, and he's a black belt. This guy's like a triple, like he's a professional fighter. And he's like, I'm not gonna kill him, you know? And he's like, trust me, you know where not to hit me. Hit me just where it's like, okay. And the guy just eventually just pounds down on him. And you see that there's no way to fake that. And if you did fake it with CG, you'd be able to tell. You know, you would know because it's the afterwards, the look on his face when he looks up that you're like, oh, he was rocked, you know? And that's the kind of thing where, pun intended, but it's like, that's the kind of thing though that like Dwayne was down for. Like he said, like, I know that this is going to take a certain level. Because I said to him, I want to see you doing this stuff. Like, if we don't, people aren't going to believe it. So we need to actually see you doing these moves. So he had to learn how to like get in the right position. He picked people up, throw them down, like in a way that was realistic to what would happen. And that was different, you know, but he was down for it, but it was because of the way that I was shooting it. And I wanted it to feel hyper real, you know, because like, if you like, I'm obsessed with reality in some way, down to performance and just the details of certain things in the scene. the background actors, how they move and what they look like. Because, like, there is a document that you can go and look at that is real. So, like, I have to do something that feels realer than that, which is crazy. So, like, it went all in on, like, how do we do that and kind of heighten it? And by doing that, like, it kind of creates a weird, different kind of space to exist in, you know?
I hear what you're saying in terms of that's always been the juice for you,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, that is true.
All right. Before we get into specifics here, I want you to wave me off if I'm off base.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Dawn, the Emily Blunt character, in their relationship. Am I wrong, both in terms of the way that you kind of narratively structured those scenes, but also the way you shot them? There's some fight-like approaches.
Yes. 100%. And that was actually something that I realized while preparing for other scenes, because as I was doing those fights, the physical fights, I realized there's a real benefit to what's happening there. Because at some point, Dwayne, you're like, okay, now it's the middle of the fight. You're exhausted. You know, it made it kind of helpful to track the emotions of what was going on inside the ring, because you were literally focused on these moments where you could kind of concentrate on that. And you didn't have to think about what came before. You felt it and you were done with it, and you were able to move on from it emotionally. And so I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take that same approach to these more dramatic scenes where there is no physical fighting. It's all verbal. And so then it became, yes, that's a good idea. Let's try it. Let's focus on this first part of the fight. Let's make this section 1, where it's the beginning of it, where maybe there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. You don't want to get into an argument. You kind of want to get into an argument because you know he's lying to you. That's the first thing we focus on. And we'll do that until we get it perfect, and then we'll move on to the next section. And then now you can just focus on this section where you've already done the first part. You know how you felt and you know what that did. And you can take that, and whatever those emotional scars that were there, you take that, and now that's your starting point for section 2. When she comes back in and confronts you about it, everything you thought you got away with, you know you didn't. And that takes on a whole other light. So you can move through the argument in a way that actually mimics those feelings. Like, oh, wow, I'm moving through matches in a way. And that's interesting because at the same time, like, that's how they could relate to each other. It's not a positive relationship in that way. Yes, there's love there, but there's
some tactics. There's some moves.
Yes, there's moves. Like, okay, I'm going to push your button here. I'm going to say this. Don't work my program. Don't tell me you're going to call my sponsor. Like, there's things that people are doing, like low blows, jabs, punches. They're doing those things, And I remember saying to Dwayne, like, you will not get upset. Like, you don't want to. This is the last thing that you want until she says something. Like, and when she mentions that she cares about you and your body and this, that's when you lose it. And he just takes this thing and he throws it, and then he's off. But that's where the argument changes, because now you're saying stuff that isn't even related to what you were talking about before, and it takes on a whole other form, and you start being mean to the other person. And that's when it's like it's uncomfortable to watch, but like, that's real. I've had a fight like that before. I'm not proud of it, but like, it's not a nice thing, and I think it's truthful, It's not that like one person is right and one person is wrong. I think that was the thing we talked about a lot, was we wanted the arguments and everything to feel very balanced, in the sense that I can understand why Dawn is frustrated. I can understand why Mark is frustrated. I wanted it to be even in that way. And in this sense, it's like she says it early on, like, oh, would it be easier if I punched you in the face? Like, is that how we can communicate? And that's it. It's like, here you are having this unbelievably caring, beautiful relationship with the people who beat you up. and you can't even have a nice relationship with me where I'm just trying to get some love and affection from you? That's it, you know? That's kind of insane. And so I wanted to explore that, and you explore that in a way that is real. And in this relationship in particular, it was complicated, you know? Dawn wanted something from him that he wasn't able to give her. Mark said something really interesting in one of our interviews. He goes, what I was doing was uniquely selfish, and I was only focused on that, and I didn't realize that all she wanted was my attention, and I didn't want to give it to her. And I'm like, first of all, that's an unbelievable thing to come to the realization of. And I thought that's also, as I spoke to him, that really affected how I was going through the movie, because as I'm learning who he is now, I'm thinking, well, this movie is about becoming a better person, becoming and having a new perspective on life. And how can you go through that? It's through an experience. So the whole thing has to kind of come together to bring you to a place of realization, this kind of grace-like moment that you find and get there. But like, that means that like certain things have to change with regards to the plot and the pacing, because you need to understand and focus on the real small parts of a human being and what they do to really get into who they are, you know, because I really wanted you to be in his head and looking through his eyes to the point where you're like, this is just like, now these are my memories. What's happening, that happened to me. I know what that feels like. So when you see him, you feel like you're like, oh yes, I was just in your head, you know?
The way you were describing how you shot the fights, you know, and I think people that have seen your work before, we're used to a little bit of that long lens documentary thing. It's interesting what you just described, that you also found a way, you approached this in a long lens, ring-like way in terms of how you shot that, which isn't always easy in an interior house.
God. No, well, that was the thing is, so then we built the house. The house was built.
Which is unusual for you.
Yes.
Where you like everything real.
On
and
location. I literally, it was interesting because I was trying to find a house where we were shooting. And it was James, the production designer, James Chinlin. He's like, first of all, I'm telling you, he's like, where we were shooting, we couldn't, he's like, we're not going to find the house. And so the compromise we had was, all right, let's build the house, but fully build it. No movable walls, running water, everything had to be where it was. And that meant we were basically shooting on location. Granted, I now had control of the location. So we were able to have like the living room and the stairwell at this angle. So I could put a camera here to get a shot of somebody standing at the kitchen table. And I could put a camera here in the living room and get a shot of somebody by the kitchen sink. And they would be out of the actor's eye lines, and we can get both of them at the same time. So it basically was side one, side two. It was basically in the shape of a ring, you know, even though a ring is not a ring, it's a square. But like that was how it was set up. And every time we would block a scene, I would essentially like we would kind of walk through it, and then I would try and find out where I could put the cameras that would be out of the way. And one of them would be close and one of them would be long lens far away. And I wanted to always be aware of the fact of, okay, well, if these were happening at the same time, because then we're going to do another setup and get different angles, but those angles still have to obey the same line. Like here we have 3 cameras all on the same line and they can all edit amongst themselves. But if there was a camera here that got a shot of you, and then like you did something to switch the line, that camera would have seen that camera had it been there. And you're switching lines. But like the idea being that like I always was trying to be aware in the edit and in how I was setting it up, because I'd be like, oh, this is an amazing thing. We can cut, even if it was like this, it would be like this. We could cut over here and we can see the leaves get scooped up into the net. But then I looked up and I'm like, the camera would see that. Can't do that. So I have to figure out another shot from a different angle that would be out of that shot's view, because I'm going to be cutting from that. So I would do it. I would be aware of the editing of the scene while I was shooting it, because I needed to be respectful. I didn't need to. I chose to. It's like, that's what's funny. It's like, I'm like, I chose to obey the laws of reality in a completely fiction, creation, you know?
And it's interesting because both in boxing and in these type of intense fights, there is a more traditional inside the scene way of doing it, which you've kind of always avoided. But it, you know, there's an element here of there's also the beats. I don't know the beats, but there's certainly the ingredients of a biopic.
Oh, for sure.
And what's interesting to me is, and I want to go into this idea of loss and end, but there's also just something where, I don't know if this is conscious on your part, you're kind of often undermining the typical sports biopic beat that's there.
Yes. And that is true.
Or even, I should also say, and the downfall.
Yes.
Not just the sports biopic, but also this idea of the addiction downfall story.
Because the thing is like the story has those elements to it. And I am aware of that. And I know that that's like in these movies. And so to do something different, I'm like, well, how do I approach these ideas in a way that is fresh? And for better or worse, I'm going to go all in on that idea, you know, because that's how I see it. And really, it's like there's going to be him training and he's going to get stronger and something's going to happen. But it's going to be to Elvis at the end of his life, like towards the end of his career when he's not the Elvis who he was, really singing with a lot of struggle. That's interesting to me. And also he's got a cramp. Like you're seeing how hard this is. So there is an element of like, oh, this is a real human being here. And he is a real person. And that's something that I find like the fact that Mark is alive, Dawn is alive, Coleman's alive. There is this element of like, okay, these are real people. So I want to tell a real story about them. And I'm going to try and understand what actually happened. What were they struggling with internally? And if you go inside, it's going to change when those beats happen and how they feel. And yeah, there is a lot of like undermining certain things because I think it's important. It's like if you just make a straight thing, then, oh, you're just doing that. You know, it's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and do something else. And that's where I'm coming at it from. And I wanted to explore something that I think sometimes gets lost in a movie that you like with those other, when you get caught up in that kind of plot or struggle, you can lose sight of something. And I think that what's interesting here is, and again, maybe it's because like early on, like Josh and I, we made a documentary called Lenny Cook. And yeah, and it was not a similar story, but it was a story about a guy who was the greatest at a specific time and didn't make it, you know. But that one was a documentary. Most of it was shot in 2001. I didn't shoot that, but I edited the movie, and I got very close to what that quality of DV sports style filmmaking was. I understood it. So when I saw the Smashing Machine documentary, I was like, this is like deja vu for me because I know what they were trying to do. I saw them because like there's a struggle to try and create something with less means that they were doing in both sides, you know? And so I kind of really just like, being actually in the ring and also. Yes. And so like, so there is, so that element of it was like, it already just like struck a thing that had already been inside of me, you know, like I kind of saw it already. I'm like, oh my God. But there was an element on that where I learned, okay, you need to accept that there is going to be like, you're going to be in this moment and you're going to live in this moment for longer than you think. And if you do that, you're going to learn something bigger than you would have otherwise, you know?
I think people that watch or listen to this podcast know this, and you've been on many times before. This is obviously something for people who have seen the movie, and I preface that because I do want to talk about this. Something that I've been playing with quite a bit in my head and trying to figure out how you pulled this off is in both of those storylines, which I understand are kind of, which are very much related, there's a loss in the ring, and there's the gun suicide attempt.
Yeah.
This is like not, if you think about the story, those two storylines, and yet where you go with this, and it seems like being an underlying thing, is there's also some element of acceptance.
Yeah.
There's some element of internal,
Yeah.
I don't know, cleansing or acceptance that I don't feel like I just hit right. There's something, and I don't really know how you did this or whatnot, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about structuring towards that.
So that was something that was from the beginning. I knew that, like, oh, where this story ends is not necessarily happy, but I want you to leave feeling good. And I want you to leave feeling excited about life. That was like my goal, was if you can leave with an idea of hope and feel filled up emotionally, despite all of that, then you're mirroring the journey of Mark Kerr himself, because he lived that entire thing and he's okay. He's in a great place. So I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it, because really that was a really beautiful thing to me. And I wanted to do that for everybody, because if you watch the movie and go through this experience and you realize, oh, I feel okay about it, then what does that say about what you're going through in life in general? And that's why I was like, oh, I called it, like, we made shirts for it, radical empathy, in the sense that, like, it's empathy on a level that's radical, where you're going into this guy's head, living everything with him, experiencing it. And so you can see those things that are intense and sad. He loses what should be the moment, the crowning achievement of his life and career to that moment. And you feel it. You are feeling that, oh my God, he lost. Everything is gone. His girlfriend is in the hospital after just trying to commit suicide. That's where he is. And you're feeling all of that. And yet, you're also feeling a relief of pressure. And you're feeling that he's come to a realization of something. And again, I don't know if it's even spoiling it, because the whole point of the movie is to go through that experience. So you know Mark's okay. You know Dawn's okay. She's alive. They're both alive. And that's unbelievable. So if you watch the movie, you're still going to feel that feeling. And that's the movie for me, is going through those emotions and coming out on top despite everything. And that's where I'm like, okay, that's the goal. Let's see if I can do it, you know? And it was hard. And it was hard to try and figure out things. And maybe it doesn't work, you know? Oh, for sure. Like, I know that this is where it is. And I remember watching my first edit of, like, the full movie. And because we cut to the real Mark Kerr. And that's something that I'm saying it, you know, he's there, and to me, I was like, I want that to be, it's a scripted scenario. It's shot on 65 millimeter, full frame, you know, and it's because it's hyper clear. I wanted you to be with him in the wild. Oh my God, now we're seeing the real world. And when that happened, yes, exactly. So it's undercutting the idea of what you would normally expect this IMAX to be. Is like, normally you do that in the ring, but now everyday life is that. What do they say? What does Bruce say in Jungleland? There's an opera out on the turnpike. That's what that is right there, you know? It's IMAX of a guy going grocery shopping.
Because the move would be Tina Turner on stage singing What's Love Got to Do with It? Or there's some kind of triumph. And this is just kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say this about Mark, dorky suburban guy going grocery shopping and just waving to the camera like my dad or something like that.
And it's like, and that's the other thing is he's referencing that, oh, wow, you guys are still following me. You are still finding me interesting. And like, he's acknowledging the camera and he's acknowledging the audience that we've just been there with him. And but to go back to that thing, when I got to that moment, if I didn't myself cry when I hit that, I failed. So I was like, but I did. I felt something very profound about Mark in that moment. And I said, okay, Now I just need to make it shorter because I know it's too long and I don't want it to be too long. So I just kind of shrunk it down. But I knew that feeling was what I was going for. And it's weird to approach a movie with the idea that you're working towards a feeling and not like, and that feeling and the plot and everything are combined. They're one and the same, you know?
I'm just going to say it, the white dress.
Yes.
There's a lot of great costuming in this. There's something, I don't even know if it's a dress. It's the white outfit that
Yes,
Emily
I know
Blunt
exactly. This is a big.
There's something about that.
So
I mean, she's amazing in it, but there's something visually that you pull off there that also is this, because the other thing is, where's my Adrian moment? Where's my big hug? And there's something about that white dress and her in that space that is also like, you're never going to be part of this, babe.
Yeah, it's so. I'm so glad you brought that up because that was a very big conversation with Heidi, the costume designer, because there was one picture that I remember seeing of Dawn. I think it was at an early UFC fight where she was wearing a white dress, not the same kind, but a white dress. And Heidi was like, she needs to be wearing a black dress to this. That's what she would wear. That's what she wears all the time. And I said, no, she needs to be wearing a white dress. And it was this big conversation almost to the point like Heidi was like, fine, we'll do the white dress. It's not going to work, you know? And I'm like, it's going to work and we have to just commit to it. And then when she saw it, she's like, you were right about the dress. And again, there's something about it that is just also seeing her iron it by herself in this room. I wanted to like, she's really proud of like what she's about to do and how she's going to present herself. And it's important to her. And nobody talks about it. Nobody even references it. It's just gone. And she's left wearing it. And it's beautiful, you know, but it does. And you're always going to recognize it because it's striking, you know? And that was important to me, is that you're going to acknowledge that it's a decision that is never spoken about, but we're always seeing it, you know?
It's something like that. It's just that it's finding those little things if you're going to land it this way that are kind of amazing. You're still editing your own films. I have to ask, when you and Josh went union for Uncut Gems, I remember you had to join Local 52 to hold your own boom.
Yes.
Are you still directing from the boom, or did you finally give that up?
Well, no, now
because I know on the curse you're in front of the camera.
Yes.
But
and then there were a couple of times where I had to just because it was so small, but I'm still in the same position where I would be if I was holding the boom, if that makes sense. I'm not at a monitor or anything. I'm literally, if Maceo is here, cinematographer Maceo Bishop, if he's here, I'm right in front of him. And I'm there and that's what I would do. That's where on Uncut Gems, when he was the camera operator and I was the boom op, that's what we did. We were always next to each other. So it just makes sense. And so I am in the same place because part of it is that I just want to be close to the actors. I want to be where they are and I want to be with them in the moments because I think you see something different, you know? You're there.
I remember Josh having I thought it was a very profound insight. He's like, Benny's like Frederick Wiseman. He's directing from the boom. And I know you don't need to hold it, but there's something about that position, which is not traditional. It's normally you're going to, you know, we've all seen the pictures of right next to the camera. Like,
yeah. And the thing is when you're holding a boom, you're trying not to be seen. That's another thing is you try to disappear even though you're there. And that I think is what's important is that like you can be in the room and nobody knows you're there. And so then you could talk to Maceo or you could talk to somebody and they're like, oh, you're there. Like it's a very unique place to be. So in a way, I'm doing that, but I'm not holding the boom on this one. But like it taught me a lot of where to be when the scene is happening. And then, editing, that's just something I can't. It's so important to what I'm doing that I can't imagine not editing it, you know, because like specifically with these fights and just in scenes, there's a lot of looseness and I know that I can make it work later. But it's like it's going to be so hard to edit these things together, but I know I can do it. And so I'm allowed to get away with a lot more spontaneity from a performance or movement not being in the same place. Like with the cat, I don't even know how I made that scene work because the cat was everywhere. It was not trained. It was all over the place. At one point, we're like, where's the cat? And the trainer was like, I don't know. And we're like, this is insane. And so, but I know that like the realisticness of the performance is what matters. So I'm going to get the realist performance from these people that just feels like it happened for the first time, and then I'll make it work later. As opposed to, we need the cat in the right spot at this time all the time so that the editor can make it match. I'm like, that guy, it's his problem. And it's like, then I get there, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with him? It's like a split personality, you know?
Last one, obviously, and we all follow this. You and Josh had developed a mode of production. There was definitely a shared principles of filming and certain ideas that I think probably I'm already seeing how some of those continue, and I'm sure we'll see it with Josh as well. It's interesting, though, now that we had the project that you did with Nathan, The Curse, and now we have this one, taking this project with Dwayne Johnson. It's interesting. We're starting – I feel like there's something here about – and again, some of those things are still there, but it's starting to develop what is a Benny Safdie thing, solo. And it's like, I'm wondering how much of that, and it's something you make films all the time. You've been doing this your whole life. Is that something that you're also asking yourself, like, what is now?
No.
Because it's like you're just focusing on what you want to do.
But there is things that you're doing a little different.
Of course, yeah.
But it's like, it's just because I'm doing them, and in that sense. So it's like, there is also an element of, it's not that I'm trying to do anything that's myself. I'm trying to do something just like I'm always trying to learn something with whatever it is I'm doing. It's like, okay, I've done this kind of performance as an actor. Now somebody's asking me to do something completely different. Can I do that? I don't know. Let me try. I'm interested in it, so I'm going to go for it, That's how I approach basically everything, in the sense of, I want to do that. How do I achieve that? Well, I can't achieve that using some of the same tools that I was doing before, so I have to change some things to make that happen. And so that's kind of what it is. It's like, even on The Curse, it's like, okay, I know there's a lot that's going on here. Like, narratively, not a lot happens. So what can I do here that makes it feel exciting? And then you start watching candid camera, all this stuff. You realize, there's a certain style of something that makes people lean in a way to somebody just playing with their eyeglasses. Like, so you just learn what the story calls for is like, you just kind of move towards that. And that's really all I'm trying to do is like, how can I best get at what I want to talk about, And I think maybe there's just the fact that like I don't have to have a conversation about it. I can just do it, So that's a little different.
I used to love listening to you two talk. I'll never forget the good time where you guys got in an argument on the podcast. And I was like, this is what it must be like on the set.
There was
like, no, we're not doing that on the next one, Benny. I was like, those conversations don't happen anymore. And you already know what's next. You and Dwayne are going to do that. What is this thing?
Lizard music.
What is it? I don't know.
So
all I heard is he's losing weight and you guys are doing another movie together.
So this is a book by Daniel Pinkwater, and he is an incredible person. He has written so many books specifically for kids and young adults, but they're kind of like sci-fi. They're strange, beautiful, funny books. And I remember reading them. I was reading them to my kids, and Lizard Music in particular. When I read it to Cosmo and Murray, I saw it do something to them. When they went out into the world, it was just different. Before the movie, or before the book, and after. They just had a different outlook on life. And I asked him, because he's alive, and I'm close with him. And I said, like, well, what is it about the books that's really meaningful to you? And he said, well, I write them for myself. He goes, they're just things that I'm thinking about. He goes, but I know that the kids who read my books, they're going to be okay. And I go, that is the most incredible sentiment I've ever heard. And then he goes, and I also want people to think like the guy selling hot dogs is just as magical as the person in Hogwarts. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because that's literally everything I believe in, you know? Not to say the other one's wrong, but hey, you can look outside and there's beauty there, you know? I'm upset. Like in my photographs that I take, they're things, doorknobs, trash, things. And I look at them, and when the light hits them perfectly, they become these beautiful sculptures, you know? It's amazing. So it just made so much sense to me. And so the book is about a kid who, late at night, after he's left by himself, late at night, he discovers a television program of human-sized sentient lizards playing music. And it's remarkable to him. And he teams up with the Chicken Man, who's a guy who has a friend who's a chicken. And in the movie, the chicken's 70 years old. And he's 70-ish years old as well. And the two of them go to try and find where they're broadcasting from. And it's an amazing adventure. It's funny. And it's something I want to see. And hey, I get to take my kids too. Awesome, you know? And I specifically remember also saying to Dwayne, there was something about, if the movie works for you, Smashing Machine, the way you feel, like what you were saying, you feel good, something happens. I said, I want to do that, but for everybody. For a kid who's 4 or 5 to somebody who's 80. I said, I want to try to do that. I'm like, let's see.
Well, congratulations on this
All
one.
right, thank you.
Mark Kerr's going to be okay, and kids that read the Lizard book are going to be okay.
That's
and,
right.
No matter how much shit they go through.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Benny.
Thank you.